Hello, this is Richard Carafel from Agility PR Solutions, and welcome to PR Profiles, video series and podcast where we chat with experts in the PR and communications industry. We think PR is the most formidable, dynamic, and rewarding field there is, and we wanted to introduce you to some of our favorite powerhouses in the industry. Today, we're speaking with Gini Dietrich, founder, CEO, and author of Spin Sucks in Chicago, and host of the Spin Sucks podcast. Hi there, Gini.
Richard, it's so good to see you.
You too, as always. Thank you for joining us.
Of course, of course.
All right, so this is kind of a rapid fire interview, so we're going to just get right into it with the first question, and that would just be could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Spin Sucks?
Sure. Spin Sucks actually launched as a blog in 2006 with the idea that we needed to figure out as an agency if this blogging thing that everybody was talking about was going to take off and it could be something that we'd offer to clients. And when we did it, there was I'd love to say that we were like super strategic and we thought it all the way through, and there was none of that. We were like, what, we hate that people call us spin doctors. So Spin Sucks, the URL existed. So we grabbed that. And then we started blogging, and we started talking about things about the industry, things we liked, things we wanted to change, from a vision standpoint, really trying to help the industry and professionals figure out a way to change the mindset of executives. And as it grew, it became more of an industry blog than an agency blog, which I'm glad that we did it as Spin Sucks instead of Armand Dietrich, because I don't think it would have gained the same sort of momentum that it did as an industry blog. But today it has evolved to, of course, it's still a blog, but it has evolved to professional development, online courses, coaching, and things like that. So it's a pretty fun little business.
Yeah, it turned out to be a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
After all. Very cool. Okay, so what's the best thing about being in PR for you?
It changes every year. And I think with experience, you learn new things and get different experiences. And so it definitely changes every year. And I would say in the last year, I've noticed a big shift from not necessarily having a seat at the table to executives understanding finally what a communicator can do, especially with everything that we experienced in 2020. And I think that we have an unprecedented opportunity right now to capitalize on that and continue to help businesses grow. Lots of leaders right now want to understand how to shift from we don't talk about our values to how do we talk about our values, and how do we do it in a way that is altruistic and real and truthful and ethical versus doing it just because that's the thing to do. And I think that from a communications perspective, we're the ones that can help do that. And I think it's a really good opportunity right now.
I agree. I think that's a very good opportunity and a good and a big responsibility for PR.
For sure.
These days.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what is the biggest mistake a PR pro can make in your eyes?
I really think it's to be unethical. Part of the values that we as professionals have is that we're ethical. And, there is this stigma that we're spin doctors or liars, or, we embellish the truth. And certainly there are professionals that do that in certain industries. I wouldn't call them communicators. I would call them publicists. I would call them agents in Hollywood. I would call some of them political hacks, but I wouldn't call them communicators. And I think there's a really big need for communicators to be ethical. And if they're not, that's a pretty big mistake. It's a pretty big issue, I think, for both the industry and you as a professional.
I agree. Transparency is the name of the game these days, and so easy to see through. All right. So, so what is a go-to industry resource, whether it be a tool or a book or a course that you can't imagine doing your job without?
The AP style book.
Of course.
You go back to it year after year after year.
Good. Any honorable mentions that you can think of?
I have a love-hate relationship with Grammarly, but I do love it because it just having it installed, it does catch things where you're like, oh shoot, I should rephrase that, or yeah, you're right. So I do like having that installed in Chrome to just do double check my work for me before it goes on to either publish our blog post or to a client.
All right, yeah, good tip. Cool. All right, now what is a common myth about PR that you'd like to debunk? You already referred to a couple.
Yeah. I think it is the spin doctor one, because when people and this still happens. I think it happens more often now because of 2016 through 2020, where you say, oh, I'm a PR professional, and people go, oh, you lie for a living, and you're like, no, I don't. Which we've talked about. I think the ethics piece of it is really, really important. And the other thing I would say is that PR can't be measured. That one drives me crazy because it can. And I think it's an easy way for communicators to sort of fall back on I'm not a math person. I'm not a left-brained person. I'm a creative, and I can help you build awareness, and I can help you build trust and reputation, which absolutely we can do. But I also think that some of what we do can be measured to actual results, and that we need to change that mindset.
Very good. Those are some good myths to debunk. All right. Now, what has been your biggest failure, and what were the lessons you learned?
The biggest failure, I think, was less about PR and more about owning an agency. And I thought, because I came from the big agency world, that you had to have big budgets and big salaries and big benefits and big what's the word I want? Like extras, like the foosball table and the breakfast every day, that kind of stuff. And I spent a lot of money on that in my early years because I thought that's the way that you ran your business. And I had to borrow money to do some of it. And I hired people with big salaries when I couldn't afford it. And I went into the Great Recession about almost $1 million in debt. And, what happened with the Great Recession. The bank called my line of credit, which was not fun. And I cried for days. I had to lay off more than half of my team. It was a really big deal. And what I learned from that is that you don't have to have those things, and you can't compete with a big agency when you're just starting out. But it also taught me to be really careful about how I run the business. I didn't know anything about running a business. I was a great communicator. I didn't know anything about running a business. And so I learned those pieces of it. I learned the business side of running a business after the Great Recession.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it is an art unto itself, isn't it?
And there's some days I still don't have it down, but I'm
sure.
better.
Sure. All right, very good. Thanks for sharing that. All right, and what advice would you give students or people that are starting out in PR?
I usually have 2 or 3 pieces of advice, but I would say the number one piece is network your butt off, because it's so easy today for you to follow the agencies or companies or nonprofits that you want to work at, that you think you'd like to work at. Follow them on social media, see what they're sharing, see what kinds of conversations they're having. Is it of interest to you? Do you like how they communicate their values? Do you like the culture that they seemingly have online? It's, it could be different in person, of course. But are you attracted to those kinds of things? Because if you're not attracted to it online, you're not going to enjoy your job working for them. So that, I would say, that's number one. And as you're doing that, and as you're sort of doing your research, figure out who it is that you should be engaging with, and start having conversations with the people who work there, because you can follow them on Twitter. You can follow them on LinkedIn. Maybe you can even friend them on Facebook. Oh, people are I'm definitely a little more dicey about that, but, start to engage, because then by the time you submit a resume or you apply for a job, you already have a reputation and people already know who you are. And that sets you miles ahead.
All right, that's true. Those are terrific tips. Fantastic. All right, well, thank you, Ginny. And so finally, how can people connect with you and with Spin Sucks?
Oh, it's easy. Spinsucks.com.
Easy enough.
Easy,
All right.
easy.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have. And again, we've been chatting with Gini Dietrich. She's the founder and CEO and author of Spin Sucks in Chicago and host of the Spin Sucks podcast. Thanks for joining us today, Gini. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It is always a pleasure.
All right, wonderful. So we hope you enjoyed this episode of PR Profiles brought to you by Agility PR Solutions. Agility PR Solutions is a leading media monitoring, media database, and outreach platform. You can use Agility to connect with journalists and get coverage, monitor media mentions, and measure your success. Head to agilitypr.com today to get a personalized demo. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode.